Well, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing today? Good. I'll ask you to ask for your grace here this morning. It kind of been one thing after another for this old body of mine. A couple weeks ago, I fell and I fractured this wrist, broke it in two places. That was kind of fun, and managed to jam this one up real good. After that, I had a cap put on my tooth, and I'm waiting for the final crown. So that month in between, it stinks. I don't know if you've had one or not, man, but I'll tell you, it's like that thing just aches off and on all day. And but that wasn't enough. I woke up Friday morning, and my back stiffened up, and I could barely move. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even walk yesterday. It was so bad, but the Lord was gracious and allowed me to come here today to preach this message that I've worked hard on all week that I think is going to speak to you in a very powerful way. So that's why I'm sitting, and I just appreciate you all kind of praying for me as I go through this, because I'm just about at my threshold of pain, if I may say so. I always feel like I can take a lot, but I'm just about there. So we want to welcome you all this morning. Hey, folks, I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad those of you who have tuned in online. Great to have you here as well. My name is Daniel. I serve as the senior pastor here at Woodlands. And I just want to say, first of all, if you are here for the very first time, I'd like to invite you to fill out this card. It's in the seat directly in front of you. And I tell you what, at Woodlands, we want to do something for our first-time guests. So if you will fill out this card and you will take it over to where Vanna White is standing over there. No, not you, the pretty one. Yeah. And we've got a gift for you today that we would like to give you, just to say thanks for coming and hanging out with us. But we'd like you to fill out this card and take that over there today. At this time, every Sunday, we have a generosity moment. And our generosity moment is one of our core values because we believe that God is extraordinarily generous with us. So we think that He wants us to be generous as well. That's part of what it means to be a follower of Christ, is to be generous. And so there's a verse from Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 10 and 12. I want to read this for you. From Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10, "Those who love money will never have enough." Isn't that true? John D. Rockefeller, who was one of the richest men to ever live, right? He was the founder of Standard Oil, Amoco, Standard Oil, that kind of thing. He was a multi-millionaire, and in today's money, he would have been a multi-billionaire. John Rockefeller was asked one time, "John, how much is enough money?" And he got a little wry look on his face, and he said, "Just a little more." So like Ecclesiastes says, those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. This is God's word. Verse 12, "People who work hard sleep well." Amen? People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much. But the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. Something we don't think about, maybe. Something we don't think about, We always think we need more. We don't need more. We always just need to be a little more responsible, a little more scheduled, a little more intentional with the money that we have. And one of the things that I invite you to do is to set aside the first part of every paycheck to give something to the Lord through His church. That's what Scripture teaches us to do, to bring your tithe, that's 1/10 of what we make, to the storehouse, which would have been the temple, according to Malachi, which today is represented in our local churches. So we invite you to do that. We invite you to give to the ministry of Woodlands and to give generously so we can continue to do the good work that we're doing. We've got a big outreach coming up here at Christmas time where we're going to be providing some Christmas gifts and baskets for a bunch of families where the man of the house is in prison. He's been incarcerated for one reason or another. And so we have, the spouse, and we have the children who don't have a dad at home to bring home money and to provide a Christmas for them. So there's a whole bunch of people in our small groups that are coming together, and we are going to be providing gifts for a whole bunch of kids. And that's from us. That's from Woodlands. That's from all of us. And so we're very excited about that. But that's the kind of things we do here at Woodlands. We do things like that all the time, whether it's local or international. We take care of orphans and widows on a national scale, thousands of them actually, through our giving to the Timothy Initiative and to kids who have foster parents. We support a ministry that blesses those families and helps to encourage those families who have taken in foster children. And there's so much more that the Church of Jesus Christ does for the people of our community and the people of the world. But we can't do any of it without you. We need you to say yes to that vision. We need you to say, yes, we want to help take care of those who are hurting, those who are lost, those who are lonely, those who are in need. And we want to do it together as a family through Woodlands Community Church. We invite you to give. We have 3 ways to give here at Woodlands. You'll see them on the screen behind me. You can give online through our website. You can give through your text. You can pick up your phone right now, and you can give a gift through text. Or you can bring an old-fashioned check. We have envelopes in the chairs right in front of you, and you can fill that out, or cash. And we have 2 little black boxes, one at this exit here, one at this exit over here, and you can just drop that in on your way out. So we certainly want to say thank you to all of those of you who have been so supportive and have been so generous in keeping this ministry vibrant and alive, because it truly is a very vibrant and alive ministry. And we thank you for that, because we couldn't do it without you. That's for sure. That's for sure. So I want to share an opportunity for ministry. One of those coming up this Friday. We got a big night this Friday. It's going to be a night of worship celebration. All right, we're just going to do a whole bunch of worship songs, and it's going to start at 7 o'clock right here at the Woodlands Auditorium. Special guest appearance by the Vineyard Church, who will be coming over and joining us, and we are going to rock out to Jesus on Friday night. So I invite you to come on out. There's no charge, of course. Just come on out, have a great time, and we're going to worship the Lord together. Should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for it. I know I'll be here. So today we're beginning a brand new series. This brand new series is called Who Needs God? Who Needs God? And you see, people are migrating away from Christianity at unprecedented levels. And maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. But there are just a tremendous number of people that have been migrating away from Christianity here in America over the last 2 decades. Now, once upon a time, people believed that religion offered solutions. People believed that, in God we would find our answers to the problems of life. But there are a growing number of people today who believe that religion is actually the problem. Religion is actually what's wrong with our world and the cause of much of the division. So for the next 6 weeks, with the help of my good friend, whom I've never met, Andy Stanley, pastor of North Point Church down in Atlanta, we're going to address this tension. Speaking of Andy, just a big shout out to him and North Point Church. This is where we got this, where I got this series from. And every once in a while I come across a series. A lot of pastors do this. I don't know if you know that or not. But you come across a series, and we listen to a lot of sermons. Pastors actually listen to a lot of sermons because, we just want to get filled up. And every once in a while you come across a sermon that somebody else preached that you're just like, oh my gosh, that is so good. I got to share that with Woodlands. And this is one of those series. So I've had it kind of on my radar for 2 or 3 years now, and finally found the perfect opportunity. So that's what we're going to be sharing for these next 6 weeks. Who needs God? Now, it's my hope and prayer that what's going to happen is you will come away with a foundation for your faith. You will come away with your foundation for your faith in Jesus Christ that will stand up to the rigors of the challenges that we're facing in America here today. Did someone just whistle at me? Yeah. It was the good-looking guy in back there. Okay. We'll have to talk later. Or better yet, maybe one of our deacons could talk to you. I'm I know, narcissistic pastor, right? You hear a whistle, you think it's you, right? So anyway, I do have a lot to cover, and so I'm going to be talking fast. And I will tell you, this message is pretty heady, okay? So it's one that you want to listen to, you want to take notes on, but there's a good chance you're going to want to go back and listen to this again. Because I know for myself, just listening to it and preparing it, I had to go over it and over it and over it to just really, kind of take it all in. Because we're going to be covering things that you don't normally, especially for this audience, because most of y'all here are Christians, and you don't normally, read this kind of material or cover this kind of stuff, because we're going to be looking a lot about what the new atheists of America that have emerged are saying and about what they believe. So here's one of the questions that we have. One of the strangest things about religion and about God in particular is, why do we have to believe in God? Right? I mean, why is it something we have to almost work at? To believe in Him. Why can't we just know? Why is there any doubt? Why is there any question? I mean, something this important, you would think that we wouldn't have to believe in it. We wouldn't have to have faith in it. You would think it would just be built in, right, with all of us. I mean, I've never had to take my marriage by faith. Right? I've never had to say, okay, I think I'm married. I hope I'm married. I really believe I'm married. Right? I mean, I've never had to look at my children and go, I believe I have children. I think I have children. I hope I have children. I'm really trying to have faith that I have children. I mean, that's just not something I have to do. I've never had to do that. So why with something so extraordinary and important as God do we have to have faith? Why is it set up that way? Why is it something that we have to believe? And why is it so difficult to believe? Doesn't it seem like we would just know? Doesn't it seem like there should be no doubt in the matter? So as you think about it, and I realize that you all here are probably all over the map. You're probably all over the map in regard to where your faith in God is. For some of you, you've got extraordinary faith. Just absolutely extraordinary faith. For others of us, you may not have much faith. Others maybe have lost your faith. Maybe you're watching online and you're just trying to find some hope in this. Some of us are trying to regain our faith. We've lost faith, we've walked away, and now we're walking back and we're trying to regain it. Some of us don't think that we could ever have enough faith, right? We're just always struggling, always dealing with doubts. So the question remains, who needs God? Does anyone really need God? And some of us say yes, but even those of us who say yes don't always live like we need Him, do we? Others say no. And yet, those who say no find it very difficult to just dismiss God, right? I mean, some people who walked with God at one time and have walked away from the faith will admit that sometimes they find themselves just praying to God, just because it's just so natural part of their life. So for some people, the question isn't really, do we need God or who needs God? For a lot of people, the real question is, do we need religion? I mean, who needs religion? And more Americans than ever are giving up on religion. They're backing away from religion. And the reason they're pulling away from religion, the reason they're pulling away from God, it isn't because atheism is so attractive. It's just that religion has become less attractive. In fact, more and more people in our culture today, and more people in the United States, as I said before, say that religion is actually the problem with our nation. We were brought up to believe, I mean, most of us were anyway, that religion is the answer to our problems. It's the solution that we need. But as we look around at what's happening in the world, and there's so much that's happened in the world, so much continues to happen in the world, you can see where people might come to the conclusion that no, actually, religion is a big part, if not the main part, of the problem. Something interesting happened that you might be aware of right after 9/11, right after the World Trade Centers, the Twin Towers and the Pentagon were attacked. you might know this, there was a surge in interest in Christianity and religion immediately following the attacks that took place there. There was interest in all things Christian, all things Jewish, all things religious. And most of us remember where we were when the Twin Towers fell, right? And so for anyone in ministry, we knew right away when those Twin Towers went down and the Pentagon was attacked, we knew that the next Sunday was going to be big. We knew that next Sunday there were going to be a lot of people in church, probably more people than there are on Easter. And sure enough, that was the case. The next Sunday after those Twin Towers went down, churches were full. I know the church I was in, it was packed. It was just packed. And the synagogues were packed. And everybody who hadn't been to church in a long time, or maybe even weren't sure what they believed about God, they showed up in church right after that. The second week after that great disaster, churches were full. I mean, people were coming. They were looking for answers. They were looking for hope. The third week after the 9/11 attack, everything went back to normal. You had about the same, amount of people in church as you normally did. And then something else began to happen that perhaps you weren't aware of, but we were all affected by this on a broad cultural level. And there was this anti-religious surge that moved across the country in the following year to years after 9/11. In fact, immediately following 9/11, neuroscientist Sam Harris, he began writing a book called The End of Faith. The End of Faith. Now, the subtitle of his book was Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason. This was a scathing critique, not of Islam, but rather a scathing critique of all religion. He turned it into a publisher, and another publisher, and another publisher, and nobody would print it. Because, right after 9/11, who wants to read an anti-Christian book, right? All the publishers thought that there's nobody's going to want to read that. And so he turned it finally into 12 publishers. He finally got someone to take his manuscript. And after they took his manuscript and after they printed his book, did you know that book spent 33 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list? 33 weeks. Of course, Christians hated it. Christians just hated that book. He got so much negative response from that book that he published another book. And this one was called A Letter to a Christian Nation. His response to the negative response he got from his anti-religious, anti-Christian book. Now, this one was addressed specifically to Christianity, the second one. And that same year, another atheist, what we call the New Atheists, named Richard Dawkins, published his famous book. Maybe you've heard of this one. It was called The God Delusion. The God Delusion. And in the opening section of his book, Richard Dawkins tells us specifically why he published this book. And this was not simply about atheism, but rather this was specifically targeting religion. It was not so much here's why you should become an atheist, but rather here's why you shouldn't be religious. And here's what he says in the opening paragraph. He says, if this book works as I intend, religious readers will open it, will be atheist when they put it down. Over 3 million people purchased that book in over 35 different languages. Now, the year after The God Delusion came out, Christopher Hitchens, he's a journalist, he published a book called God Is Not Great, subtitle, How Religion is Poisoning Everything. And once again, this was an attack on religion. It was not so much an argument for atheism as it was to say religion is the problem. Not a specific religion, but all religion is the problem. Now, here's what happened, guys. Those men I just mentioned, they became rock stars in our nation. If you were watching late night television, you probably saw them interviewed. They made all the late night shows. They were on college campuses spreading their gospel of atheism, if you will. They were YouTube sensations. And you can go to YouTube today and you can see where these guys are listed in multiple debates. that are listed there. And their debates were watched over and over and over again. They sold millions and millions and millions of books. And while there was not a huge surge in our country toward atheism or of becoming atheist, a significant percentage of people in our country continued down a path that had started, they had begun on. And because of their writings, this path began to pick up speed. A significant percentage of people in this nation began to disconnect from religion. In fact, so many people have disconnected from religion and disconnected from faith in God, there's actually a new category, a new name for these people that officially shows up on a lot of documents, a lot of public documents. They are now called the nuns. Now be careful how you spell it. All right? It's N-O-N-E-S. The nuns are the unaffiliated. They're unaffiliated. They equal about 23% of the U.S. population. Folks, that's 1 in 4 people. All right? And about 35% of millennials, those who are basically between 42 and 22, they just say, we're not affiliated. We're not affiliated. 35% of millennials. Now, they're mostly male. They're mostly left-leaning politically. And theologically, they are agnostic or they're apathetic. In other words, they don't know, they don't care, they just don't need religion. The nuns would say, hey, we're not hostile toward it necessarily. We're just not affiliated. We just don't want anything to do with it. We're just done with religion. We're just done with the church. We're just done with the God that was presented to us as children. And that's a key phrase and a key qualifier. They say we're just done. And it's not that we find atheism all that attractive. No, they say, but here's what I know for sure. Religion and the God that I was presented with as a child have lost their appeal. I would never pretend to speak for all religions. I know Christianity, I don't know all religions. But the nuns that have migrated away from Christianity in our country, and I'm talking millions of people, millions of millennials, mostly grew up in the church. They know the stories. They know the parables. They know about a 6-day creation. And whereas I can't speak on behalf of all religion, I can speak on behalf of Christianity with confidence. Now listen to this. It is the church's fault that so many have moved away from Christianity and have migrated into the nun category. You see, it's people that do what I do. It's my fault, amongst others. Because when you open the pages of the Gospels, when you look at the 4 biographies of the life of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when you read about Jesus and you look at his interaction with people, here's something that is absolutely unmistakable. People who were nothing like Jesus really liked Jesus. They really liked him, even though they were nothing like him. That Jesus, the person, not just the miracle worker, not just the teacher, there was something about Jesus that was immensely attractive to people who were nothing like Jesus. People who were nothing like Jesus, and Jesus liked them back. He liked hanging out with them. He liked spending time with them. And if Christianity is not compelling, if Christianity is so easy to migrate away from, I'm convinced it's because we have the wrong version that we're offering. And the thing that convinces me of that more than anything else are the deconversion stories that you hear from those who have left Christianity, those who used to be Christians. I've heard many of these stories personally. I've read many of these stories. Many other pastors have heard many of these stories. Andy Stanley, who pastors a church, get this, of more than 50,000 people, if you can even wrap your mind around that, okay, with the multiple campuses that they have. Andy Stanley, who has more than 1 million downloads of his sermons every single month, from around the world. He is one of the most listened to preachers in the entire world. If you've never listened to an Andy Stanley sermon, man, I invite you, write it down and go listen. All right, he is a master communicator. He's almost as good as your pastor. I just want you to know. Almost. Yeah, so he would be a good alternative, sometime to check out. But these deconversion stories, here's the thing. When people deconvert from Christianity, when people move on, they move away from Christianity, sometimes it's in an instant. It's because a tragedy happened, right? I mean, I heard a guy tell me that he didn't believe in God, and I said, why don't you believe in God? And he said, well, because God took my mom. You don't believe in God, but God took your mom. Just think about that one for a minute, okay? And the fact, and he goes, she was the best Christian I ever knew, but she died from cancer and God didn't save her. And so sometimes when a tragedy happens, people move away from God. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's a book that somebody reads. You read one book and all of a sudden everything else you ever knew in life, you toss out the window. Sometimes it's a college class. There's a lot of colleges that are a lot of professors in public universities today that are very, very atheistic, very agnostic, very anti-Christian especially. Okay, and so you take a class, and these guys are smart, and they can make things sound good, and boom, like that, 18 years of church and Sunday school go out the window. That happens. I know some people that's happened to. Sometimes it's the new friends you have. You find some new friends, and, they don't believe, and so next thing you know, you don't believe. But here's the thing. This is so important, I have yet to hear somebody whose reason for deconverting from Christianity actually had anything to do with Christianity. Soak that in. Think about that, because that's a key point and a truth of this message here today. So as you listen to these stories, you listen to the deconversion stories, it breaks your heart. It really does, because people have gone through some really terrible and really difficult and really tragic stuff, and a lot of it has been caused by the church or by church people. So, as you read about the people who talk about migrating away from God and faith and Christianity specifically, I think to myself, wait a minute, I don't believe in that God either. I don't believe it. The original first century version of Christianity never embraced the ideas that so many have found so offensive. So those things that drove you to walk away from the Christian life, if that's you, if you're one of the nuns present here today or watching online, are things that Christianity at large should have walked away from ourselves a long, long time ago. So for the next few weeks, I want to address that, and I want to try to correct that. And to begin the discussion, I want to go out on the very outer edge of the conversation and begin with an update on atheism. You see, in fact, today's message, its title is Atheism 2.0. Because the reason I want to do this is not because so many people have checked the atheist box. They're checking the nun's box, not necessarily all checking the atheist box. But here's the thing, it's not because so many people have stepped across the line, but because so many people in our country have stepped toward that line. They've stepped away from the Christian line and stepped toward the atheism line. Because when you step away from faith, folks, you have to understand, when you step away from God without considering what you've stepped toward, people oftentimes, they find themselves in a situation they never meant to put themselves in. And that's what we want to guard against. So bottom line is pretty much this. You cannot move away from something without moving toward something else. And the good news is that the new atheists, the guys I talked about earlier, Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and others, the new atheists who have all written these books and all these articles, they have essentially updated us on atheism, thus Atheism 2.0. So here's what I want you to understand, and here's what they would want you to understand, that atheism is not simply disbelief in God. If you think atheism is so simple as, well, I just don't believe in God anymore, I'm an atheist, you might want to listen very closely, because it is not that simple. And these guys, who are a whole lot smarter than me, I'll tell you that, they give us the blueprint, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you here now. Atheism is actually a complex belief system, just like Christianity or just like any other world religion, that logically leads to some unsettling conclusions. Now, I acknowledge that being a follower of Jesus Christ sometimes leads to unsettling conclusions, but you need to understand you do not escape unsettling conclusions by walking away from God. Now, this is important. Unsettling is not a truth test. Unsettling is not a test of whether something is true or not. In other words, something can be unsettling and at the same time be true, right? I mean, something can be absolutely true and absolutely unsettling at the same time. Unsettling is not a truth test, and here's why this is important. By the way, if you want an example of something that's unsettling but is still true, think about your teenage daughter's boyfriend. Very unsettling, but true nonetheless. Many people, perhaps you're one of these people. You've stepped away from religion, and specifically you stepped away from Christianity, and you stepped away because of some unsettling outcomes or results, the unsettling consequences of the Christian faith. But see, unsettling is not a truth test. Can you get that I'm trying to help you remember that? I've repeated that about 4 or 5 times already, and I'm going to repeat it a few more times. Unsettling is not a truth test. Now, that's true about atheism and what I'm going to tell you about atheism, but it's also true about Christianity. It cuts both ways. So, some of the things we're talking about today relating to atheism are unsettling. But this is not an argument against atheism, as I said. In fact, my goal today is not to convince you that atheism is wrong. That's not what I'm trying to do. I simply want to update you on what it means to be an atheist in the 21st century. So here's my agenda, because I do have an agenda. For those of you who have stepped away from the faith, you've stepped away from God, here's my agenda. I want to scare you just a little bit. Just a little bit, okay? I also want to help broaden your thinking, maybe even just a little bit from where you are. Because you cannot step away from one thing without stepping toward something else. So today is not an argument for Christianity. In fact, next week won't be either. Today is not an argument against atheism. It's not an argument for God. Today is just a heads up. Heads up. Today is, if you choose to give up religion, and if you choose especially to give up on God entirely, then here is the alternative. And the truth is, it's really only one alternative. It's either God or no God. There's nothing in between. Okay? I mean, you can try to figure that out. If you do, come and tell me. But people have tried to for centuries, and some really smart people. And it's either God or no God. And that's the choice we have to make. And you owe it to yourself to know. You owe it to yourself to know. So what I'm going to do for the rest of our time, I'm going to share with you the 6 tenets of atheism. The 6 tenets of atheism. So get your pen out, get your notes out, take notes on this. Today in the 21st century, this is what it means for you to embrace atheism. This is what it means, okay? Well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Okay, that means you do believe in these 6 things. And you're going to argue with me all the way through this, and that's okay. Okay, that's okay. So 6 tenets, first 3 may be new to you. The last 3 are probably the ones you've known for a long time, growing up. 6 tenets of atheism. Number 1, I'm going to call it the illusion of mind. The illusion of mind. The illusion of mind is, if there is no God, and I don't know how else to say it than like this. So everybody, look up here. All right? Everybody look me in the eyeball. Okay? If there is no God, there is no you. If there is no God, there is no you. What do I mean? Well, we all know that we all know what our brains are, but the whole idea of mind, the mind sort of sits on top of or sits outside of this intangible thing. There's this intangible thing we call the mind. The mind is an illusion, all right? Now, this is the first tenet of atheism. In a world that is biology, chemistry, and physics, in a world where there's nothing but biology, chemistry, and physics, there is no place for, there is no room for the mind per se. Years ago, Christopher Hitchens wrote a book entitled Mortality. Christopher Hitchens passed away in 2011 from esophageal cancer, actually dying from pneumonia, a complication from that. When he realized that his disease was terminal, he decided to write a book about his last several months or whatever time he had left of living, and write about that and chronicle that. So Mortality is basically the journal of a dying atheist. And one of the things he writes a lot about is his conversations with his doctors. And his doctors would say things like, Christopher, your body is fighting. Your body is trying. Your body is reacting to. They kept referring to his body, his body, his body. And then in his book, he writes this. He said, I quote, I finally said to my doctors, I don't have a body. I am a body. I am a body. You see, if there is no God, if everything is chemistry, biology, driven by the laws of physics and the laws of nature, then that's true. That's true. There's no Daniel. All right, right here. I mean, I'm just a body. I'm just a body. So how do you go about life as just a body, not having a body? I don't really know. I don't really know, because the whole idea that there is a mind and there's something beyond biology, it is so ingrained in our experience, especially, I would say, those of us who were raised to believe in God. But Hitchens is right. If there is no God, there is no you. There's just biology. Now, is this true? Well, if you're a nun and you're moving toward atheism, that's just one of those uncomfortable truths, conclusions, that you have to embrace if you decide you don't need God. Number 2, the illusion of free will. This one may be new to you. The illusion of free will. In a world that's governed by physics, the law of physics, there is no room for free will. Everything is determined. Everything has been determined. All right? Now, you may have experienced choosing who you married. All right? But that was determined. You thought you had a choice, but you didn't really have a choice, because it was determined who you were going to marry. Every decision you make is determined by biology and all science, right? This is called determinism. It's actually a term. Everything is determined because the idea of free will does not jive with a universe that is driven and controlled by the law of physics. There is no free will. There is no free will. Sam Harris is one of the new atheists. He has a podcast called Waking Up with Sam Harris. Now, I find this kind of humorous. Maybe you will. Let's see. On one of his podcasts, he was complaining. Okay, he was kind of going on talking about how he is oftentimes misquoted. All right? And he was complaining that Christians take things that he says and he quotes them out of context, and kind of like tongue-in-cheek, he's whining about being critiqued, whining about being criticized, and being attacked unfairly and all that stuff. And then, while he's complaining, while he's criticizing, he stops all of a sudden and he says this, "But I realize I have no right to criticize my critics. They have no choice in the matter." And he kind of laughed at himself for being critical of his critics, because the critics had no choice, because he knows that according to Atheism 2.0, there is no free will. Everything is controlled and understood by science. Everything is determined. Every decision you've ever made is an illusion, my friends. Stephen Hawking, another of the new atheists, and you probably know his name. Stephen Hawking, there was a movie about him, 2014, called The Theory of Everything. It got a lot of critical acclaim. Brilliant Stephen Hawking. He suffered from ALS, but his mind was sharp until the day of his death in 2018. He believes in determinism. He believes everything is determined. So there was a lecture that he did some years ago where he said, everything about the human experience is determined. But then he said, because it is determined, it doesn't matter. Now, he's a believer in determinism. He's a believer in there is no free will. And so he jokingly said at this seminar where he was speaking, I've noticed that even people who believe that everything is predestined, that they think nothing can change it, they still look both ways before they cross the street. Now, please hear me, everyone. I want you to know, I am not going to argue that that's not true. These guys are a lot smarter than me. They absolutely are. But at the end of the day, it is almost, in fact, unlivable. It's almost unlivable to follow by these tenets. You cannot live as if you're just biology. If you try that, eventually, you will be locked up by other biology, and you will lose the freedom that you never had. Okay? It is an unlivable worldview, but that does not mean it's not true. But if you're going to be an atheist, and if you decide that God is not in the picture, this is the logical consequence of that belief system. Number 3, the illusion of value. And this may be the most disturbing of them. There is no room for value in the atheist viewpoint. No room for value. We all believe that value is a thing, and we exercise it every day, right? I mean, we put value, there's financial value, and we value people, and we value work, and we value exercise. We have this whole concept of value, but it's not scientifically plausible or possible in a world governed by physics. There is no value. It's all just mathematical equation. And yet it's something that we leverage and talk about every single time we have a conversation, including this conversation. But according to Atheism 2.0, value is an illusion. There is no actual value. There is only ascribed value. That is this. There's nothing that actually has value. It's just that in my predetermined way of living, I ascribe value to certain things. Now, this is a really big deal, especially when it comes to justice. Now, listen up. Because it means that justice, or being just, is just what we want it to be. Okay? Let me unpack this. In other words, in a world where there is no God, where there is no theism, where it's physics, chemistry, and biology, there is no justice. So the moment we reach outside of our biology to try to hold another biology accountable to some invisible thing, we have appealed to justice. But it's an illusion. There's no such thing. Justice is just what I want it to be. And here's something interesting to think about. In a culture today, and this might be especially true if you happen to identify as a nun, if you fall into the category, I'm not affiliated, that's you, that's the nun, it's not uncommon for people to say, when it comes to truth, I have my truth, you have your truth. And you've probably all heard that, right? I have my truth, this relativistic view. I have my truth, you have your truth. You leave my truth alone, I'll leave your truth alone, all right? You have truth, I have truth. And you know what? That might work when it comes to truth. But here's the problem, folks. It does not work when it comes to justice. You will never, ever, ever hear a sane person say, hey, I have my justice, you have your justice. Don't try to impose your justice on me, and I won't try to impose my justice on you. When it comes to truth, I can have my truth. When it comes to justice, I want you to be accountable to my justice. But I'm telling you, when you extract theism, when you extract God, when you are left with physics, biology, and chemistry, value, the sense of ought, the sense of ought not, they just go away. There's no such thing as value. It's an illusion. Now, here's the thing. That may be true. It may be. But you can't live that way. You can't live that way. In fact, as soon as you open your mouth, as soon as you begin to talk, as soon as you begin to argue, as soon as you begin trying to convince somebody of something, you immediately appeal to this thing out there that's invisible, but it is so real, we can't even have a conversation without it. Now, the next three I'll go through real quick because they're ones that you grew up with, okay? So here are the basic tenets of atheism. The last three, because I want to be fair and review them so that we kind of get this. Number 4, something came from nothing. Something came from nothing. Now, this is the big mystery, right? It's the what happened before the Big Bang that they're talking about. But you can't really say what happened before the Big Bang because nothing happened before the Big Bang. You can't say what was before because before is a time term. And before the Big Bang, there was no time. When the Big Bang happened, suddenly, after that came time, matter, and space. When the introduction of time, matter, and space came, then came the laws of nature. Then came the laws of physics that govern those things. But before that, although you can't use the word before, because that implies time, which was non-existent, nobody knows. In fact, Richard Dawkins admits, he says this, the cosmology is waiting on its Darwin. The cosmology is waiting on its Darwin. Charles Darwin gave us natural selection and evolution, but we're still waiting on someone to come up with a plausible theory. We're still waiting for somebody to come up with a believable hypothesis. We're still waiting for somebody to come up with something that isn't so extraordinarily improbable that it really falls into the category of impossible. We're still waiting on someone to come up with a theory that explains why anything exists. Now, you may believe, and maybe it's true, that there was nothing and then there was something. Number 5, first life emerged from no life. First life emerged from no life. First life emerged from no life with no help, mind you. The further you are away from a problem, the simpler that problem looks. Now, guys, that is a whole message in and of itself. But just grasp, this is important to grasp this. The further you are away from a problem, the simpler the problem looks. How many of you have, kept up, read about, heard about the war in Ukraine with Russia? It's way over there. It's far, far away from us. I don't know about you all, but I've solved it a half dozen times at least. All right? It's just not that hard. And when you're this far away, see, the farther you are away from something, the simpler the fix looks. But the closer you get to something, the more complex the fix becomes. So we need to understand that the further you are away from a problem, the simpler it looks. What could we get further away from, my friends, than the formation of first life? Right? That's about as far away from anything as we can get. So the idea of no life becoming first life or simple life seems like a simple problem. Yeah, there was no life, then there was life. Simple, right? But it's not. As you know, because there's no such thing as simple life. There is only simpler life. But the very first life, even the simplest form, folks, it was an extraordinarily complex. And so if you push God out of the picture, you believe, whether you can explain it or not, that first life emerged from no life. Or as Francis Collins describes it, from lifeless matter to the digital elegance of DNA. Number 6, natural selection is responsible for all life after life. Natural selection is responsible for all life after life. All life forms, all the varieties that we see, all the varieties that have come and gone, some have become extinct through the years, natural selection is responsible for all of those. But at the end of Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, he summarizes natural selection. And I want to read for you a rather lengthy quote from the book about what he says about natural selection. So listen to this. I think it's on the screen here behind me too. Think about it. On one planet, and possibly only one planet in the entire universe, molecules that would normally make nothing more complicated than a chunk of rock gather themselves together into chunks of rock-sized matter of such staggering complexity that they are capable of running, jumping, flying, seeing, and hearing. He's talking about us. Capturing and eating other such animated chunks of complexity. Capable in some cases of thinking and feeling and falling in love with yet other chunks of complex matter. Some of you are smiling. And I know. I laughed too. I thought, are you making fun of this? Are you making fun of evolution? Are you making fun of natural selection? But he's not. In his own creative way, he's trying to make us all go, wow! That's amazing! In fact, look at how he finishes the statement, specifically referencing Charles Darwin. He says, we now understand essentially how the trick is done. Through this invisible force that we refer to as natural selection, the simplest form of life became every form of life that ever existed. Now, if you have lost faith in God, or if you're losing faith in God, here's my hunch. My hunch is that your struggle has absolutely nothing to do with these 6 tenets of atheism. That's my hunch. That's my guess. It's not like you had this extraordinary faith in God and God was faithful and then you read a book, and after you read a book, you walked away from God. In fact, your struggle with faith, I'm going to say, has virtually nothing to do with atheism at all. Your struggle with faith has virtually nothing to do with the creation of the universe. And where did first life come from? In fact, I went through these things. Here's what I was thinking. Or maybe this is what you were thinking as you were going through this, as you were listening to this. Again, if you consider yourself a nun, if you're unaffiliated, if you've walked away from God, You may have been thinking this as I was going through this here today. Well, I don't believe that, and I don't believe that. No free will, I don't believe that. You're right, I don't think you can live that way. But I don't have to believe that to walk away from God. If you don't believe in God, it doesn't mean you have to believe that. That may be what you're thinking. Well, here's the problem that you have, if I may be so bold. The smart guys all say that you do. To follow a path toward no God. This, what I've shared today, is what you actually believe. You have to believe that to dismiss God. And this is not why, for most of you, if you're honest, this is not the root of, but come on, at the end of the day, the reason you've lost your faith, or the reason you're struggling with your faith, it's personal. It's far more personal. It's not that you have a new infatuation with atheism. It's not that you find it more appealing than your current version of faith, the version of religion, the version of Christianity that you grew up with has just lost its appeal. And at times, when compared with science, compared with what science is telling us, you just feel like Christianity, the version you grew up with, it just can't hold up. In other words, you've lost or you're losing your faith in God. And I'm going to do my best, my friends, over these next few weeks. If you will hang in there with me, and I strongly invite you to hang in there with me, to come back next week, I'm going to do my very best to convince you that the God you have quit believing in, the God that you've lost your faith in or you're losing your faith in, never existed. And in all due respect, let me say that perhaps the God you grew up believing in, that you can now so easily walk away from, never existed at all. My purpose today is to simply shine light. Is to shine light on the only alternative that could be true. And again, I'm not judging whether it is or is not. It may be true that every decision that you've made, that you felt like was your free will, your free choice, it may be true that it was all just an illusion. It may be true that you have no value. It may be true that your children have no value and your grandchildren have no value. And neither does your work, and neither do any of the people that you love. That may be true. It's possible that it's all an illusion. It's possible that there is no justice. It's possible that this thing we keep trying to appeal to make things even, and to make sure that people are treated fairly, it's possible that all of that is just an illusion because there's no mind. And for that matter, there's no you. You're just biology. But here's what I know most about us. We hope not. We hope that's not true. But our only hope for that hope, everybody, need you to look up here. Look me in the eyeball. Get off your phones and back there. Look me in the eyeball. Our only hope for that hope is to put hope in God. Our only hope for this hope is to put hope in God. Who needs God? Perhaps we all do. Next week's message is called The God of the No Testament. And you need to be here. You really need to be here. We've got to follow up on this, okay? You can't just leave this one hanging. You got to be sure and be here next week. And because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that the childhood version of God that many of you grew up with, and how this childhood version of God is not sustainable with the adulthood pressures that we all deal with, and with the pressures of the scientific community of today. So you got to be here next week. And maybe you should bring a nun with you. Spell it any way you want. Let's bow together in prayer. Father God, in Jesus' name, we thank you, Lord, for the privilege we have to come before you, our great God Almighty. God, why did you make us so that we have to have faith in you? And God, sometimes it is hard. And God, sometimes we lose our faith. And God, sometimes we walk away. But God, today I hope that everybody understands when we walk away from you, we're walking toward something else. We're walking toward an entirely different way of viewing life. So, Lord, strengthen our faith. You told us in your word, Jesus, that if you have just a tiny mustard seed of faith, that's all we need. We could say to this mountain, be moved and be thrown into the sea, and it would do it. God, give us a little bit of faith, I pray. And help us to live out that faith all week long. And when people look at us this week, God, when they see the smile on our face, when they see the lift in our step and the joy in our spirit, God, may they wonder, may they even ask, what's going on with you? And we can simply say, I believe in God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I invite you to stand if you would.